Welcome to Psyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. My name's Josh. I'm joined by Bob, Heather, Matthew, and Darren. And today we're talking about Doctor Strange, the 2016 movie from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The movie starred Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, Chiwetel Ejiofor as Mordo. Eventually he would become Baron Mordo in the comics. And Rachel McAdams and Benedict Wong. And Mads Mikkelsen as bad guy, and Tilda Swinton as the Ancient One. And I love this movie. It's easily the most visually striking movie to date. Probably, I would say, the most visually striking movie in the entire MCU. When we talk about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 next time, like that one is probably the most colorful movie, but this one just visually is the most interesting. There's always something to see, especially when they're in the mirror dimension. I love watching that.
Yeah, their VFX, especially the sparking portal, the mirror dimension, the astral separation punch. Mm-hmm. Those were like defining visual effects at the time, and were replicated and parodied. Homage time and time
and not
again.
For nothing they did win the Academy Award for best visual effects.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, this movie is among those in the MCU that I don't get tired of, and that I'm always looking forward to it. You know, again, as I've said, I'll do a rewatch of the MCU and I won't skip any movie. But there are some movies that I look forward to more than others. I never really look forward to Ant-Man, and it's not because I don't like it, but it's just like, okay, I got to move on past Ant-Man to get past it. But Doctor Strange is one that I'm like, all right, cool, let's do it. You know. So anyone chosen just the Josh show?
I love Doctor Strange. I think that I've mentioned it in previous podcasts that Doctor Strange started when I talked about the whole one of the 30, like Dad always watches the same 30 films. Like this was the movie because I was watching it. Like I watch this movie fairly regularly. I don't know why. It's a movie. It's one of those where I don't do MCU rewatches. I just watch the MCU movies that I like. And but I love Doctor Strange. I never get it's one of those ones where I don't get tired of it. I just sit down. When I sit down and I want to watch a movie just to be entertained, this is one of the 30 that I will watch. So I thought this movie was great all the way around.
Yeah, I really like this movie a lot. I was going through my ranking, which I'll save for the end. And I there are times where I'm like, I really want to put this in the top 5, and then other times where I really want to put it in the top 10. And then sometimes it gets edged out just past the top 10. But I always find myself enjoying this movie a lot. I think it's got a really compelling villain. The visuals are amazing. It's like Inception on steroids. Even now, 10 years later, the CGI quality may not be, as great a decade later. It's still good. But the way they portray the mirror dimension and the folding of realities and the astral dimension, and even when he's flying through whatever you want to call that, his LSD trip, I guess we could call it.
The
multiverse.
Yeah, the multiverse.
But when she kicks him out of his astral form and sends him flying into his own mental, cognitive, whatever you want to call that, it's just fascinating to watch.
One of my favorite shots when we're talking about the mirror dimension and some of the visual things that they did. One of my favorite shots was when they played with the optical illusions. So they show an intersection in New York, and as the camera pans, you only see the intersection moving. Everything else kind of moves behind it in 3D, which is an optical illusion I've seen before, but that I'd never seen it in a movie. And yeah, that it's always like one of the most striking. Like I said, it's the most visually interesting. This movie never gets boring if you just look at the pictures.
Visually stunning. Yeah, it's very captivating. It's very different. I remember first seeing it and like, wow, like this is trippy, like, so I really enjoy the visuals in it, and I really like the story. It's a good paced story compared to others, if that makes sense. Like, it's not, they don't rush the story as much as some of the other MCU movies. That said,
Yeah.
for me, this is kind of like Guardians, where again, not a comic book, not brought up in comic book world. The only connection to Marvel is the initial splash screen and a couple name drops later on, like, oh, the Avengers protect, Earth physically, and we do, we do this,
Right.
but so
Yeah.
and then dropping the Infinity Stone. But other than that, it did not feel in the same Marvel universe until later movies tied things together more.
It's funny. It's funny you say that, Heather, because I remember you saying that about Guardians, and when I was watching this one, I was like, Heather might bring that up because that's how I feel watching this one. Is it's not that connected.
It's completely tangent.
Mhm.
And I know because I've seen future movies that it does come back together, but it was definitely, and now for something completely different.
Yeah.
Do you feel it's tangent because of the fact that this was like the big introduction to magic in the MCU, and then Guardians was the big introduction to cosmic in the MCU kind of thing? I
just
found
because
that,
they are so different.
yeah. The
Plus,
fact
this
that they
one
delve
also
into
doesn't really mention the others. The only thing they do, like you said, they say that the Avengers take care of the physical realm, and they name drop a couple of people. They talk about the Infinity Stone for one line, and of course, in the mid credits scene, we see Thor.
That's after the movie.
One of the questions I go ahead, Darren.
I was going to say, for such a visually striking and kind of seminal movie for the visual effects, it really locked in a lot of what the MCU ended up feeling and looking like in a lot of ways. But for all of that, it really had a forgettable villain in Caecilius, unfortunately. I mean, even
I fully disagree with that, but continue.
Really?
I do.
Marvel
disagree with
Marvel
that too,
doesn't
but
Marvel doesn't seem to disagree with that, because their action figure was relegated to a 2-pack because they didn't have confidence to sell that character in and of itself.
I think he's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
We should get to that, but
I almost felt like Dormammu was more the bad guy than Caecilius was representative of the big bad in the movie. I don't know.
I think Caecilius had some good stuff and some bad stuff about him, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Bob, you were going to ask something.
Yeah, I was going to. Well, I kind of wanted to kick off the whole, Stephen Strange before he, Dr. Stephen Strange before he
asshole.
becomes.
Yeah, he was a dick before, and he was a dick after, just in a different different
but
if
field.
I don't know. After he did gain some humility in his journey.
A little bit, but he's still basically Tony Stark the entire movie, and he's still Tony Stark in Infinity War when he's talking down to Tony, and they're having their little argument, and they both seem to. It's like the battle of the Tonys.
Okay. So I think his ego did build back up, but yeah, he was knocked down, and he was pretty humble, at least for a middle part of the movie. When he actually apologized to Christine, like that kind of stuff.
I'm not saying there's no growth. It's not that there's no growth, but
then once he became comfortable in these powers, then he kind of went.
Yeah, but he picked up those powers really fast.
Oh yeah. Well, there's no one arguing how intelligent he is. He's got a photograph.
Well, intelligence, some sort of natural ability, of course.
Yeah, but they had to actually point it out. They had to hang a lantern on it in the movie to say, wow, you picked that up, all that magic stuff really really fast, like faster than anybody, in history kind of thing.
It takes him about a year, according to what I've read. He's studying for about a year there. From the time he gets to Camartage until the time that he does the thing with the time when he first gets the Eye of Agamotto and starts the movie proper, really. The plot kind of moves forward at that point. That's right after he had that conversation with the Ancient One, and he asks, how do I get from here to there? And she says, how did you become a surgeon? And he said, years and years of practice and study. And then he does that, except he does years and years of practice and study in 1 year.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's, I think the movie, though, does a really good job with the setup of him being the surgeon and how he doesn't like to work on the ER cases that are really simple. Like, he wants the complex stuff because he wants the adoration, but at the same time,
Well,
But
he
he
also
won't do the
doesn't want a
ones-
losing case.
He doesn't want
which is what
anything
comes
that
out.
is
Anything that
could
he could lose.
Yeah, but don't lawyers
Yeah.
do that too? Like most people in professions like
possibly,
that,
but when we're
where they can choose their
but-
clients, do that.
Yeah, but with a lawyer, if he chooses not to represent someone, they get a different lawyer. But with a doctor, if you don't get the right person,
Like the guy
your life
that
is-
he went to seek out on the basketball court, like he wouldn't
we
take his
see
case.
it come back to haunt him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he didn't want to operate on a woman because he said she was going to die, and he didn't want to break his record.
Yeah,
And then
that's
after
what I mean.
the accident, he calls that French doctor, and the French doctor says exactly the same thing to him. I
Yep.
have my own reputation to think of. So,
Yep.
and that's something that I noted down, that, to quote Doctor Strange, feels so good.
yeah.
Which, by the way, I did want to make a mention that they put in that song, because that song in and of itself is so noteworthy. Chuck Mangione, feels so good. It's a minor thing at the beginning of the movie, but it's a very noteworthy song because, as Dr. Strange points out, Chuck Mangione got a top charted song playing a flugelhorn.
Yeah. So when the crash happens, obviously that's the turning point, blatantly, right?
Yeah.
But do you feel that when he got into the car crash and kind of the outcome of that, do you feel like it hit a little bit differently than some of the other MCU origin stories?
I feel that this. Well, first, I think it's funny that we compare him to Tony Stark. I think he's more arrogant than Tony Stark, but I feel that they moved him into his downfall quickly in this movie. I know that there was a lot to cover with the whole mystic arts, and that's the meat and the potatoes of the movie, but I feel like it's like 10 minutes and he's already in the accident, and I feel like it's quick, but you also feel bad for him because I think it's kind of a visceral like you see Tony Stark's chest get blown up in Iron Man 1, right? And you see the blood, but this is like his hands are completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So I think you feel for it a little bit deeper because they visually portrayed it as more damaging, and that's kind of what his life is built around, is his hands. So I think they
Yeah.
made the connection really well.
Well, they
And
also were making a
I felt
statement.
I did feel for him, that yes, his hands are his life, and that emotion that goes with it, but he was portrayed as such a jerk in the beginning of the movie that at least when the accident was happening, it was still a little bit like, karma sucks, doesn't it? Like I think I still had a little bit of ire toward the way he was being portrayed up to that point. But yes, of course I empathize, like looking at his hands, and he's a surgeon and all that.
I wasn't
yeah,
sure
so-
if anyone. Oh, go ahead.
No,
was
go
it-
ahead, Josh.
Oh.
Or
Well,
Matthew,
I
go
wasn't
ahead.
sure if anyone noticed when he was driving the car and he gets that call, and the guy tells him like some of the cases that they're working on that they might need him on, and the first
Yeah, they
person
mentioned
they
Rhodey.
say, they say,
Yeah.
a 35-year-old Air Force colonel who crushed his spine in some kind of experimental armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Thoracic
catch that.
fracture. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was cool. But I also
Matthew.
And again, you think of it like he doesn't want that case, and it's like if you even have that inkling that that's Rhodey, like it just makes you even more mad that he's so dismissive. Like, come on, if you're supposed to be
Yeah.
like the best neurosurgeon here.
But I also
help the
believe
guy
that
out.
that whole accident, and I think that the reason it was done so quickly, and I'm pretty sure that they were giving a message, and that's why they did the accent the way they did. In a lot of movies, when there's an accident, you see it coming for at least a minute or two, where you see the person's distracted and you see another car coming, and they have these big establishing shots and then slow motion, and they have the big accent. This one, he looks away for a second, and then boom, he hits.
He looks away for a
right.
second, like 10 different times, and he's
Yeah, I know.
going at like 100 miles an hour up the mountain. Like,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
but
No,
that's
I
the
still
whole
saw it
point.
coming.
Well, no, you're
It
supposed
was
to
not
see it
sudden.
coming. No, what I mean is they don't show any
It was
establishing
violent, though.
shots of
Yeah.
another car because they wanted to make that point. They wanted to get the point across that it only takes a fraction of a second of you taking your eye off the road and then an accident happens. They were telling people that, and they even put it at the end, the very last credit at the end of the end credit says like drive responsibly, don't take your eyes off the road. And even the aftermath of the crash, everything happens very quickly from the crash itself, and you see the dashboard, go onto his hands, then him in the hospital, and then him with the things in his hands after the surgery, and then his life is ruined because they wanted to make the point that it only takes a fraction of a second and your whole life changes.
Right.
A good
Matthew,
So I
what
think
point
that
were you going to make?
I think lost it now. Oh, coming back to the arrogance of him. Like, yeah, nobody likes an arrogant person, but at the same time, his arrogance helped save that guy with the gunshot wound in with the full bullet, and they were going to pronounce him dead. It's like, wouldn't you want the top dog on your case? Like, even if he dismisses you, a couple different times, maybe in the future he would have gone back to some of these patients. I don't know, but it's like, wouldn't you want the best of the best on your case?
I don't know. It's a
Even
bit
if he
of
was
a
kind of a
trope
douche.
that the
Yeah.
brilliant guy has to be a jerk. Like, I'm sorry, you can be brilliant and a
Yeah.
nice person.
I think
I don't
it's
know
kind
why.
of,
I don't know why though, but every time I see a scene where a doctor is going to screw something up and then another doctor comes, tells him off, and fixes the problem, it always makes me happy. I enjoyed it in this movie, and I enjoyed it in Firefly when there was an episode where Simon is in the hospital and he sees uh, a doctor he doesn't even know, and he's not supposed to be there, but he still goes in and saves a patient and like tells off the doctor for doing it wrong because and he says your patient should be dead. And for some reason, I find that very satisfying, even with Doctor Strange, who is kind of a jerk.
Right.
I will say the arrogance comes back to haunt him, or not haunt him, but haunt the viewer. Like, even if you feel bad for him, he immediately subverts you with the "I could have done better" line, and you're like, oh well,
Exactly.
now I feel a little bit less bad for you
Yeah.
as a character.
Well,
because-
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
and
still
then how
feel
he
bad for him.
treats Christine, like all that kind of stuff. Yeah, like
Sure.
Yeah.
they're pushing you to really dislike this guy as a person, even when you feel empathy for his situation. Yeah.
I do like how quickly and rapidly they cut through his downfall, where he's constantly searching for experimental treatments and going to different medical boards, and they're like, well, it's possible,
Yeah.
but it's dangerous and expensive. And you see how quickly his life, like Josh said, it's a fraction of a second. All his money's gone because he
Yeah.
is so obsessed with fixing his hands.
Yeah.
because
And
Well,
that's
his
life.
hands,
I'm
yeah, his
fairly
hands
certain
were
they
his
were
ident-
making a point.
right.
Right.
His hands were his identity. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
He says,
Well,
you've
and that's
ruined me,
supposed
but
to be the point. Is,
And then they
is
point
that
out later
your
with
identity
the-
is not just your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, and they point out later with the wizard
who doesn't,
literally
yeah.
without hands, he can do way more than
Master
you can at this
Hamir,
point.
I think was his name. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and
he says, like, how is this not about being able to use my hands? And then she says, Master Hamir, and he
Yeah.
comes out and he does it.
he
with
comes
no
in and
hands.
is like, I could do everything. It's like, oh man. So
So-
Master Hamir has a lot of purpose because he's there, and first he's there to show Doctor Strange that the Ancient One isn't. You have to forget everything that you've learned. First thing he does
You
is go
must-
inside and make.
unlearn what you've learned.
And then the first thing he does is he goes in and he sees Master Hamir and he assumes that's the Ancient One.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
Sexist.
that in
that's why Tilda Swinton was such stunt casting, because it's like that for that moment alone, they're
It
like,
was so
we could only
were-
do that if we cast Tilda Swinton and do that kind of switcheroo.
I remember
that.
reading the interview about Tilda Swinton. I mean, I think she does a fantastic job as the Ancient One, but I know that they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I remember reading the interview where they were talking about how like they knew they were going to get crap about it no matter what. If they went with the traditional Ancient One from the comics, it was too much like Fu Manchu. They didn't want to be stereotypical he was a Tibetan in the comics, but a Tibetan man with a long mustache and beard. They didn't want to do that, but they were afraid that if they had an Asian woman, then she would appear as the dragon lady, quote unquote, and they didn't want that either. And this was like what they said in the interview. So they went with Tilda Swinton, and I'm pretty sure it's because she's so good. She had done it before. She's so good at playing characters that are not quite like, she's definitely feminine, but like she can pass
He has some
for
androgynous
androgynous.
features. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is why she was cast as Gabriel too, right? In Constantine,
Well,
Right.
right? Am
Yeah.
I remembering that right? So and I
And then
think
now-
that she go ahead.
Oh no, that just makes me think of Zoolander, where Benedict Cumberbatch was all.
I never
all
watched
is
it.
all. You never watched it? Oh,
that
you
was
watched the
Zoolander
clip.
too. That was
Yeah, it's
I
Zoolander, too.
couldn't get.
Yeah,
I
he
couldn't
plays
get,
an androgynous like model.
I couldn't get past the
Named
trailer.
All.
I always see Tilda Swinton as the white witch from Narnia.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
She killed that role.
Which,
She
which
killed every
also which
role.
also goes to, you know, she has quite a sense of authority in the characters that
Yeah, she
plays
holds
as
herself
so,
well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
So-
I had to mention, I even wrote it down. I love her smile when she is that first time she's talking to Doctor Strange and
Showing him
like
the
she's
book.
serving him tea, and just she knows this. She's like, this guy thinks he's hot shit, and he's so beneath me. And you just see this smile because she's just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's so fun to watch her
See,
like that.
that is more interesting to me than the doctor telling the other doctor off. As
Yeah.
far as like
I
that
like them both.
that, you know, cutting somebody down in a
Well,
way. Her way
one
of
of the
doing
things-
it, I like better than his way of doing it.
I like both, but I remember that it struck me. I love that smile when she's like, I forget what she says, but she's like, this is a map of the human body, and she shows him the thing with the chakras, I think it was, and he's like, you're talking about spirits or something, and then she
Yeah,
shows him
he
something
he
else.
starts to be
And-
dismissive because it's not
Yeah, and as soon as he
Western
says that,
medicine
she's
science.
got this smile, like she's actually chuckling at him, and it just is like, that's it. It made me feel so
So-
happy to watch it.
So, question: do you think that kind of smile, because they kind of hint at this later, like, is a little bit of a recognition of this, like, I don't know, not completely convinced, like it's, you know, sometimes you need to break the rules kind of personality? Do you think that she's picking up on that soon? The character is picking up on that in Doctor Strange, because like,
I mean-
it's kind of brought back in the end, you know, almost like a "you remind me of myself" kind of moment.
Oh,
Well, we
I see
don't
what
know
you're
that-
saying. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you look
she
back on
knows-
it from the yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't
No,
know.
no, I was gonna say,
that
yeah,
that
it's-
kind of smile. I'm wondering if was intended to be a hint of that kind of recognition, like oh, I know what you're all about. You know, Adam.
Well, she
Just a
also
thought.
knows. She also knows very well what's going to happen, because we see later on in Endgame when Bruce Banner goes to talk to her on the roof during the 2012 battle in New York. He wants to get the stone, and he says he needs to see Doctor Strange, and she's like, you're a few years too early. I think it was several years too early, and like he was currently performing surgery. She already knew he was going to be there.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, she's more perceptive, or the writers over the course of the MCU further on, kind of retroactively show her as a far more perceptive being than than her first introduction.
This first movie, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
they
Okay.
or
expand
possibly she used the time stone to find out that he was going to be there eventually. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought that the most interesting thing out of the first meeting before he starts doing his training was the whole science and magic, because we got that in Thor,
Mm.
where he's explaining to Jane, and he's like, he's all, you know, it's, you call it science, but where I come from, it's one and the same. And then this one, you're getting actually a little bit of a different spin of it, that it's actually more in depth. You know, if you kind of look at those two kind of conversations, you know, it's like in Thor, it's like the ooh ah, you know, type of thing, the world tree and all that other stuff. versus
or cryptids are just glitches in the matrix. These kind of
exactly.
explanations of things you thought were weird and out of place are actually integrated or consequences of this grander structure.
Well, I think with the magic versus science debate, she answers that. The Ancient One answers that pretty quickly, that it comes from the multiverse. That's after she kicks him out. He comes back in. She's showing him. She mentions the multiverse a lot throughout this movie. So that leads me to the question is all magic in the MCU pulled from the multiverse? And then but then that leads me down the rabbit hole of well, how does that work with the sacred timeline and Loki? I know they hadn't thought that far ahead, but then it gets a little funky with the whole multiverse thing. And where does the magic truly come from if the dark dimension's outside of space and time? And I don't think they fully navigated that topic in the MCU, despite how many different entries versus the science versus magic.
Well,
I don't think they want
because we work it out now.
Sure.
We do that.
They're just
We do that.
writing the interesting ideas. We get to try and explain them all.
Yeah.
Or not. I mean, that's a big difference between the magic of Asgard, where it's not actually magic; they're just technologically advanced, and now we have magic that's actual supernatural magic.
But is it actually
another
magic?
realm?
Yeah,
Because
but is it, or is it a higher level of science of
Right.
reaching into multiverse?
Because if you think of Loki season 1, he's just sitting in a thing, like a little castle at the end of time, and that's just because he's a really smart guy and he figured out how to beat everybody with science and navigating the timelines, and he makes the sacred timeline. So it's is it ultimately science at the end of it, or is it actually magic? So
it was Arthur C. Clarke, right? Said any significantly advanced science is indistinguishable from magic.
From magic, yeah.
Wow, that was deep. All right, we can end it right there. Thanks for listening to that. So this takes us. Then we get to we get introductions here to Mordo. We get introductions to Wong. We get the whole learning thing, which
and Camartage
and Camartage.
I don't know if this is anything.
Not Camartage.
Camartage.
I was actually curious this time. I never had thought about it before, but when I was watching the movie a couple days ago, I kind of wondered where they got the name. Stanley and Steve Ditko, when they created the character, they had this whole backstory of Camartage, and I wondered if it was based on anything, and if it was based on a language. I mean, I don't think that there's a real
Camartage. Say it with me. Camartage.
But the point is that so even though it's not an actual word or anything, it is based on the language. So similar to Taj Mahal. Taj means crown. So this would roughly, I don't know if it matters, but Camartage roughly translates to moon crown. Kamar means
as in moon knight.
That's interesting. So
just thought you'd like to know that.
I did. I did want to know that.
We want to know everything. Talk a little bit about Mordo, Wong. We all love Wong. Wong became, it's like after Coulson was gone, you got Wong doing a lot of different tie-ins in here.
Oh, he's doing heavy lifting on the comic relief. Heavy lifting.
Yeah. Oh. Well, but he's also popping up in some of the other ones, like I'm thinking of Shang-Chi, later on and that type of thing. So he's got that. Right. So, talk a little bit about Mordo. I mean, obviously he is.
Well, Mordo is I really enjoyed him in this movie, even though they changed his background, but I don't care that much. But he was always supposed to be in the comics. He was a bad guy. He was Baron Mordo, and in this, obviously, he's a friend until the end of the movie. And the only thing I don't like, and this is something for the second movie, is that they didn't really give us Mordo as a villain. In the second movie, it's like it's already happened. They give us a few things, they tell us about it, and then we see him later on in the movie, a variant of him in another part of the multiverse. But I kind of was disappointed that we didn't get a movie of Doctor Strange versus Mordo. But that said, I really enjoyed how they portrayed him in this movie. And the actor, go ahead.
I was just say, I don't find him to be interesting enough to have a movie about him. I know that they set him up as a villain at the end, but he's so. I know the Ancient One's like, well, he's rigid from his upbringing, and but he's just kind of boring. He's
Oh,
kind of
the
one-dimensional.
actor carried that
Yeah.
character
Sure.
portrayal all the way.
You
There
would
was
tell-
no kind of underlying.
It was written just
all the
like,
actors.
here's what I am. I'm your, your Jedi master, and I fully believe in the light side of the Force until I see my master use the dark side of the Force, basically. And
and
now
then
I'm
he
a
gets
bad guy.
completely disillusioned.
Yeah, it's like watching Dagon in Jedi Survivor. If you played that video game, it's like he has one exposure to the dark, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna be bad now," and I find that to be boring. So
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I liked
but,
how he was portrayed. And Chiwetel Ejiofor is a really good actor. I also loved him in Serenity.
yeah, is
as the bad guy.
breakout
And,
role there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in a few
Yeah.
other things I know, and he's always really good.
12 Years a
And-
Slave.
Oh,
That's a good one. Sad.
yeah.
And I mean, of course, like love Wong, but I'm sorry, I cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I was just going to get into Wong. I think Wong is awesome, and he does a lot of he becomes that I don't want to say immovable wall, but he's always there to kind of be like, hey, listen, like it's interesting because you can kind of say that like Mordo and Wong are kind of like two halves of the same coin. Wong's just not as strict as like Mordo is, but they both are kind of on the same page, at least when they come in when Doctor Strange is, using the time stone to to do the apple thing. And it's like, but then, you look at near the end of the movie where he's reversing time and Wong's like, well, don't stop what you're doing. Right. Even though it's like, you got to do what you got to do. So whereas Mordo's like, he just won't move from his like, hey, this is, we can't be like this.
I think there's a lot of good chemistry between Wong and Doctor Strange in this movie as well. And I think their comedic timing, I find the comedy in this movie to be some of my favorite out of the entire MCU.
Right.
And those interactions where he's like, you already read all these? And he's like naming musicians that have one name. That always
Yeah,
cracks me up. And then he's listening to Beyonce.
And then he's
later.
listening to Beyonce. Like
Yeah,
he
I-
always
and
had.
trying
Like
to get him to
he
laugh,
always
and he doesn't
had.
laugh until the very end of the movie. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
They have a good-
I actually think this was my favorite time that we ever saw Wong. I don't think he ever lived up to, like, I like him in all the movies he appears in, but I don't like him as much as his performance in this particular movie. I feel like he, maybe because he's not so much, he's comic relief here too, but not at his expense. In other movies, I feel like it's, I don't know, maybe not, but it feels like they're at his expense, or that they make him out to just be kind of like a no fun guy, like in No Way Home, how he's like,
or the hunk of,
don't do that,
the hunk of chocolate fudge, the hunk of chocolate fudge or whatever that was. Yeah. And then what, you wanted more in Endgame? It's like, well, like that's a cool line, but that's not the character. At least that's not what we get in this movie. And I agree with that, because it comes back to the point we made with Guardians of the Galaxy. It's they started shoehorning in humor into characters that weren't necessarily humorous prior.
And this character's humorous enough. The way he was in this
Deadpan.
movie, they shouldn't have messed with it.
So this is my favorite of his appearances, but I still like him.
I mean,
hold on, I have to stop everyone because we're out of time for today. We will be back next week to continue our discussion of Doctor Strange. So thank you. If you haven't already, hit like and subscribe, and as always, make tomorrow better than yesterday.